Night falls over the Giza Plateau. The vast desert sinks into absolute silence, broken only by the whisper of wind brushing against ancient dunes. In the pitch black sky, a full moon casts its cold silver light onto the colossal stones, where the Sphinx sits in silent vigil over time, and the pyramids rise like man made mountains, enduring through millennia. No sound, no sign of life, only moonlight and stone. But in this very silence, a flood of questions echoes through the mind of an unseen traveler watching history unfold. What if everything we've been taught about ancient Egypt is wrong? What if those massive structures, the Great Pyramid of Giza, the Sphinx with its motionless gaze fixed on the sunrise, were not built by pharaohs, but are remnants left behind by a civilization buried in the shadows of time? We've grown accustomed to the mainstream narrative that the Egyptian kings mobilized tens of thousands of laborers over decades to raise these stone wonders. But pause for a moment. How could a civilization 4,500 years ago, with no steel, no modern wheels, no cranes, cut, transport, and assemble millions of multi-ton stone blocks with millimeter precision? Does that truly convince you? Don't answer just yet. Try closing your eyes, taking a deep breath, and letting your mind drift to a faraway era where the boundary between reality and myth blurs like desert mist in the night. Imagine standing in the icy stone corridors deep inside the Great Pyramid, where there are no carvings, no paintings, no trace indicating it was ever a tomb. Do you hear anything? A whisper? An echo from the past? Perhaps those stone blocks aren't merely construction material, but fragments of a vast system far beyond modern human comprehension. Perhaps behind the Sphinx's mysterious gaze lies a warning, or a sign from a knowledge once existed, and then erased. The night still flows on over Giza, but you and I, curious souls who refuse to settle for simple answers, are about to embark on a journey to uncover ancient secrets, bold theories, and unresolved questions, where science, archaeology, and imagination blend into a mystical painting still unfinished. Are you ready? Because what's about to be revealed will make you see the pyramids through entirely different eyes. The Sphinx lies there, amidst the silent Giza Plateau, like a petrified creature guarding the gateway to the past. With the body of a lion crouching low, muscles coiled as if carved from nature's raw majesty, and a human face etched with supernatural dignity, this entity is unlike any other creation of humankind. It's not just a statue, it's a living symbol, as if imbued with the soul of a forgotten era. The Sphinx's eyes gaze toward the eastern horizon, where the sun rises each morning. There is something in that gaze, absolute stillness, unchanging presence, and a sorrow too ancient to name. It is not the look of a human being, nor the gaze of a king. It carries the weight of wordless wisdom, a whisper from a past too distant for us to grasp. There are no inscriptions on its surface, no pharaoh's name, no royal insignia, no praises or markings proving it to be a product of ancient Egypt. In a civilization where everything, from wheat to death, was inscribed, this silence is the most mysterious thing of all. Then, in the late 20th century, an American geologist named Robert Schoch arrived here. Unlike historians bound by textbooks, he read the statue like stone, and he saw something no one had dared to look at closely before: the erosion patterns on the Sphinx's body. They weren't the work of desert wind, nor scars from sandstorms. Those deep, long, vertical grooves were textbook signs of water erosion, from sustained, heavy rainfall over centuries. But how could there be rain here? The Giza Plateau sits in the Sahara Desert, one of the driest regions on Earth. For thousands of years, this land has known only wind, sand, and blazing sun. Rainfalls strong enough to cause such erosion, according to climate research, vanished from this area over 7,000 years ago, perhaps as far back as 10,000 years. Which means, if the Sphinx's erosion truly came from rainfall, the statue must have existed before ancient Egypt even began. That truth struck a blow to mainstream historical narratives. We believe the pharaohs built the Sphinx around 2500 BC during the reign of King Khafre. But Schoch's theory turned that upside down. It subtly claimed that the Sphinx does not belong to Egyptian civilization, but is a surviving remnant of another era, one even older and more complex. And if that's true, then who created it? Close your eyes for a moment and let your imagination lead the way. Brush off the sands of the present and picture the Sahara as it once was, not an endless sea of dunes, but a lush green savanna. trees casting cool shade, rivers flowing freely, gentle rain falling on fertile ground, and wild animals roaming through forests. This isn't some far-fetched fantasy. Science has confirmed that the Sahara was once a fertile land, home to massive lakes, hunter-gatherer communities, and traces of early societies. In that paradise, there may have existed a civilization, not one that left behind metal or parchment, but stone. Colossal monuments, structures that defy explanation through classical technology. They lived in harmony with nature, understood the laws of the universe, and knew that stone alone would endure when all else faded away. Perhaps they were the people of Atlantis, as legends whisper, or a prehistoric race with intellect far beyond modern humans. They didn't carve their names into statues or boast of power. Perhaps they built the Sphinx not for religion, but as a message, a memory etched in stone, meant for the future. And when the earth changed, climates shifted, forests turned to desert, they vanished, or withdrew into shadow, leaving behind a colossal statue guarding humanity's forgotten memory. That idea may be labeled as fanciful, but isn't it more reasonable than believing a civilization without steel, without wheels, without machines, could create such a monument, carved from solid stone, with flawless technique that left no trace? Defenders of mainstream history will object, claiming this theory is false, unsupported. Yet they too have no clear answer for the water erosion, the silence of the statue's surface, or the uncanny feeling that overtakes anyone standing before the Sphinx. Maybe we're asking the wrong question. Maybe instead of asking, how did the Egyptians build the Sphinx, we should be asking, why didn't they destroy it, but instead built an entire civilization around it? A lost civilization. A Sahara once green. A nameless, ownerless statue with eyes that speak. When woven together, these elements are not just conspiracy, they're an invitation to see history through new eyes. You could stand there, under the Giza moonlight, close your eyes, and imagine the sound of rain falling on your skin, the sound of an era never recorded. You could feel each gust of wind from the past brushing through your hair, whispering that something has been forgotten. And if you are brave enough to believe, then the Sphinx will no longer be just a block of stone. It will become a gateway, not one that leads to Egypt, but to a time before Egypt. A realm of memories never written, but still alive, in stone, in sand, and in the gaze of a creature who has stared into the sunrise for tens of thousands of years. In the darkness of the Giza desert night, as the Sphinx sits in its eternal silence, behind it looms one of the most magnificent structures humanity has ever known, the Great Pyramid of Khufu, also known as the Pyramid of Giza. With an original height of over 146 meters and a mass of approximately 6 million tons, it is not just a massive block of stone in the desert, but a colossal mathematical machine encoded in numbers. Since ancient times, people have been astonished by the size and proud appearance of the pyramid. But it wasn't until modern science began taking precise measurements that the true mystery began to emerge, not in its outward shape, but in the numbers hidden behind every stone block. Let's begin with a simple yet shocking fact. The four sides of the pyramid's base align precisely with the four cardinal directions: east, west, south, and north, with a margin of error of only 0.05 degrees, a deviation almost impossible to achieve without modern positioning tools. And what's even more astounding is that even today's observatories, equipped with compasses and laser instruments, struggle to match such accuracy on a scale this large. And that's not all. The base of the pyramid, over 230 meters per side, differs by only 2.1 centimeters between its longest and shortest sides. That means across an area larger than 2 football fields, the length discrepancy is no more than the thickness of a house key. This cannot be the product of trial and error or guesswork. It's the mark of an incredibly precise and deliberate intelligence. And then we begin to see strange numbers emerge. If you take the perimeter of the pyramid's base and divide it by its original height, you get a result astonishingly close to 2 pi, approximately 6.28. This cannot be a coincidence. It implies that the builders understood the concept of pi thousands of years before ancient Greece ever defined it. And as if that weren't shocking enough, the slope angle of the pyramid's faces, about 51.84 degrees, produces a ratio between the base and height of the triangular face that comes very close to the golden ratio, FUFT 1.618. Do you see what's happening here? The pyramid is not just a physical structure. It's like a colossal mathematical expression where every stone encodes a number, a proportion, an unspoken link between geometry and the cosmos. Then, as researchers dug deeper, they uncovered something even more chilling. If you multiply the pyramid's height by 43,200, you get nearly the exact polar radius of the Earth, about 6,356 kilometers. Multiply the perimeter of the base by that same number, and you get the equatorial circumference of the Earth, approximately 40,075 kilometers. The margin of error in these calculations is so small, it's practically negligible. So the question arises, how could an ancient civilization have known the precise dimensions of the Earth? Something Europe only began to grasp during the Renaissance. How did they come to use the number 43,200, a figure directly related to the concept of the Earth's precessional cycle, the slow wobble of the planet's axis over a 25,920-year period? These numbers are not merely symbolic. They connect the pyramid to the very planet it stands on, as if the entire structure were a scaled model of Earth, encoded to transmit a message, perhaps for future generations, or for someone else. And if you think this is all just a mathematical coincidence, then prepare to explore another layer of mystery. Astronomy. The Great Pyramid of Giza isn't just aligned with true north. It also contains narrow air shafts that pierce through the body of the pyramid, pointing outward from the inner chambers toward the sky. Around 2450 BC, if you looked along these shafts, you would see them aimed directly at specific stars in the Orion constellation, Orion's belt, and the pole star of that era, Alpha Draconis. Why Orion? In Egyptian mythology, Orion was associated with the god Osiris, the deity of death, rebirth, and the afterlife. But here's the strange part. The three main pyramids of Giza, Khufu, Khafre, and Menkaure, are aligned precisely with the three stars of Orion's belt, matching their spacing and offset in an exact celestial mirror. This isn't coincidence. It's a cosmic reflection carved into Earth. If that's true, then the pyramid is not a tomb. It's a communication device aimed at the stars, a massive astronomical instrument encoded to track stellar movements, mark cosmic cycles, or, as some believe, a time machine. Pause and imagine. If you were part of a civilization that had mastered its understanding of the planet, of mathematics, astronomy, and physics, but faced imminent catastrophe, floods, meteor impact, collapse, what would you do? How would you preserve your knowledge? Books can burn, metal corrodes, but stone, especially monolithic stone blocks, can last tens of thousands of years if placed correctly. So what if the pyramid is a stone hard drive containing all the mathematical, astronomical, geometric, proportional, and celestial knowledge of a vanished civilization? A message encoded in form, proportion, and position, waiting for someone curious and capable enough to unlock it? When you begin to think that way, you realize the pyramid isn't just a structure, it's a question. A monumental question mark rising from the desert, challenging time, science, and the imagination of humankind. How could an ancient civilization, with no computers, no telescopes, no satellites, have known the exact size of the Earth? How did they know about the precession of Polaris, the Earth's axial wobble, or the 2-pi ratio between its circumference and height? All of this hints at a provocative hypothesis. They weren't ancient in the way we assume. Perhaps they came from a forgotten prehistoric knowledge system. Perhaps they were aided by a higher intelligence from beyond Earth or from the future itself. Or maybe we, the so-called moderns, are the ones who have fallen behind because we've forgotten how to see the world through the eyes of the cosmos. Numbers don't lie. And if you listen closely, the pyramid will tell you a story, not in words, but in ratios, in light, in shadow, and in sacred geometry. It's a reminder that Earth is part of something much greater, and so are we. When standing before the Great Pyramid of Giza, one can easily be overwhelmed by its grandeur, precision, and sheer scale that defies imagination. Mainstream history has long claimed it to be the tomb of Pharaoh Khufu, who ruled Egypt around 4,500 years ago. But as we venture deeper into this structure, a series of details begin to emerge that make the royal tomb theory increasingly implausible. Let's begin with the king's chamber, the central room, buried deep within the pyramid, believed to have held Khufu's mummy. From the outside, the chamber is completely bare. The walls, devoid of carvings, paintings, religious symbols, or royal titles. This is in stark contrast to virtually all other royal tombs of ancient Egypt, where every wall is a vivid world of color, poetry, curses, names, and burial rites. The so-called stone sarcophagus inside the king's chamber is actually a massive granite box weighing dozens of tons, placed there before the chamber itself was constructed around it. It contains no mummy, no lid, no funerary objects, no coins, no jewelry, no human trace whatsoever. If this is a tomb, it is the most sterile and emotionless tomb in the entire history of ancient Egypt. Some argue, perhaps the pyramid was looted, its contents stolen, the mummy removed. But this theory collapses under scrutiny. There is no evidence of forced entry. The passageways, walls, and hidden rooms remain intact. The stone box shows no signs of being broken or pried open. There are no debris, no leftover tools. Everything is too clean, as if it was never used, or never meant to be a tomb at all. Now let's take a different path, not through traditional archaeology, but through physics. In recent decades, acoustic scientists and engineers have tested strange phenomena inside the king's chamber: resonant sound. When someone produces a sound in the king's chamber, even a soft hum, the echo doesn't fade away. Instead, it resonates, sustaining itself at a unique frequency, about 110 hertz. This frequency aligns with certain natural resonances of the human body, particularly in the lower abdomen, an area tied to survival energy and primal vibration. Some who have stood inside the king's chamber describe the experience as a vibration spreading through the body, as if the stone were alive, or a shift in consciousness. So the question becomes, why would a tomb be designed to resonate sound? Perhaps this wasn't a place of burial, but a device, a sound resonance chamber meant to induce altered states of energy, consciousness, or communication? For contrast, consider Tutankhamun's tomb, a relatively modest burial site, yet it held thousands of treasures, chariots, crowns, scepters, a solid gold sarcophagus. Every wall tells a visual epic. Everything is dedicated to honoring and remembering the dead. But in the Great Pyramid of Giza, the largest tomb, the greatest monument, none of that exists. Empty, silent, stone and geometry. As if those who built it had no interest in leaving their name. As if what mattered wasn't who lies within, but how it functions. This is no longer a tomb. It resembles a machine, encoded in stone, geometry, sound, and light. Some call it a consciousness rebooting device. Others view it as an energy transmitter or an upright cosmic map planted on Earth. The Great Pyramid of Giza may not tell us who was buried there, but it might just tell us how the universe works. Some have even proposed a theory that the pyramid is a device designed to alter human vibrational frequency, enabling access to higher states of consciousness. The ancients believed that sound creates matter, and that if you could discover the fundamental frequency of the universe, you could open a gateway between dimensions. So what if the pyramid is a vibrational key, meant to unlock a portal through space and time? While there is no conclusive physical evidence yet to fully support such hypotheses, one thing is increasingly clear. Everything we know about the pyramid contradicts the tomb theory. There is no mummy, no burial objects, no royal names, no rituals. And instead, we find acoustics, resonance, stellar alignment, the golden ratio, pi, and a scaled model of Earth. If we continue trying to force the pyramid into the framework of a tomb, it's like holding an iPhone and insisting it's a makeup mirror, just because there's no dial, no latch, and no lipstick stain. Instead, let's expand our thinking. Imagine the pyramid wasn't built to bury someone, but to activate something. A gateway? An energy field? A stellar connection? Across ancient cultures worldwide, from Mexico and Peru to India and Cambodia, we find hundreds of pyramid-like structures. Many are also astronomically aligned, acoustically resonant, and not tombs. Could it be that these ancient civilizations shared a common form of knowledge, one that has faded through the tides of time? Maybe the pyramid is a bell ringing from a distant past, calling us to remember something we once knew, once were, before humanity forgot who it is. You may believe it, or you may not. But try standing inside the king's chamber, where dim light barely reveals the granite glowing as if alive. Let out a single hum, softly, and feel how the sound responds, echoing through your chest, spiraling down your abdomen, reverberating up your spine, sending a chill through your being. In that moment, perhaps you'll understand. The pyramid is not dead, it is alive, and it's waiting for someone to ask the right question. As we trace each stone, each number, each echo from the silent walls of the pyramid, we may think we've reached the end of the mystery. But then, tucked away among a trove of forgotten ancient texts, a small, time-worn stele quietly opens another path, subtle yet deeply provocative. This is the inventory stela, a relic seldom mentioned and often dismissed by traditional archaeologists as unreliable. Yet that hasn't stopped it from telling a different story, a story that shakes the very foundations of the mainstream historical narrative surrounding the Great Pyramid and the Sphinx. The inventory stela was discovered in 1858 by Auguste Mariette, one of the pioneering Egyptologists, during his excavation near the Temple of Isis in Giza. Carved in limestone, the stela details the activities of King Khufu, the very same pharaoh credited by history as the builder of the Great Pyramid. But the contents of the stela completely contradict the official version. On the inventory stela, Khufu never claims to have built the pyramid, nor does he take credit for creating the Sphinx. On the contrary, the text describes how the king discovered an ancient temple of the goddess Isis buried beneath the sands, next to a magnificent Sphinx statue, already present long before his reign. Khufu is portrayed as someone who cleared the sand, restored the temple, and constructed a modest shrine to honor the ancient deity. The wording is not only unambiguous, but carries a tone of humility and reverence, as if Khufu saw himself as a caretaker of legacy, not a creator of it. Why is this important? Because if the text is accurate, then both the Great Pyramid and the Sphinx predate Khufu, meaning they may have existed before the recognized dawn of ancient Egyptian civilization itself. Mainstream scholars were quick to dismiss the inventory stela, labeling it a propagandistic artifact from a later period, possibly inscribed during a time when Giza's religious significance was being exaggerated. But pause for a moment and think. If this was truly propaganda, why would it diminish Khufu's importance? A typical propagandistic inscription would glorify its central figure, crediting the king with monumental achievements like building the Great Pyramid, taming the desert, or commanding the gods. Instead, the inventory stela does the opposite. It shows Khufu removing sand, fixing an old shrine, and humbly honoring the goddess Isis. Paradoxically, this humility gives the text more credibility. It does not serve an obvious political agenda and reflects a rare modesty in royal Egyptian inscriptions. Even more explicitly, the inventory stela states that the Sphinx was already standing when Khufu arrived, and that he ordered a temple built beside it, not to claim dominion, but to pay homage. If this is true, then Giza isn't the pinnacle of ancient Egyptian civilization. It is the remnant of something far older, something still echoing beneath the sands. Imagine the scene. In the time of Khufu, around 2550 BC, the Giza Desert had already existed for millennia. Sandstorms had long buried much of the Sphinx. Locals spoke of a stone lion gazing toward the sun, half submerged in the scorching sands. Then came Khufu, a curious, decisive king who ordered the excavation and discovered not just a statue, but an entire architectural complex beyond comprehension. No one knew where it came from. No one knew how it worked. But everyone could feel the mysterious energy emanating from the place. And Khufu, instead of destroying it, chose to preserve it. Could that be why there isn't a single inscription proclaiming, "I am Khufu, builder of the pyramid"? Because he knew it wasn't true. And could that be why later scribes sought to amplify his role, while the truth, ironically, was humbly recorded on a small, forgotten stone stele? Recall this. The Great Pyramid of Khufu bears no carved inscriptions naming him. The only mention of Khufu appears in a small chamber above the king's chamber, scrawled in crude red paint, suspected by many scholars to have been added later. Meanwhile, the inventory stela is a complete stone inscription, older and far more detailed. So why has that document been ignored? Why did archaeology choose to dismiss it? Perhaps because it threatens to unravel an entire framework of knowledge built over centuries. Because if we accept that Khufu did not build the Great Pyramid, then we must re-examine all assumptions about the capabilities of ancient Egypt. We must consider that there was a civilization before it, now lost, but one that left behind massive stone markers worthy of awe and reverence. Perhaps that civilization once stretched across North Africa. Perhaps they understood sacred geometry, Cosmic mathematics, the use of stone not merely as material, but as a vessel for transmitting knowledge. And when they retreated, due to war, cataclysm, or climate change, they left behind artificial mountains like Giza, like stone observatories. And Khufu, as a later soul wandering through the aftermath, was simply the first to live close enough to the past to recognize its true value. The inventory stela, seemingly just a fragment adrift in the vast current of history, may in fact be the key to unlocking an entirely different chapter of humanity. A chapter where we are no longer the pinnacle of civilization, but merely descendants groping through the sands of time, trying to recover what has been lost. You may be skeptical. You may ask, why aren't there more texts that confirm this? The answer might be this: because time erases all things soft. Paper, leather, wood, leaving only stone. And stone, like the Great Pyramid, the Sphinx, and the inventory stela, continues to whisper truths we've yet to truly listen to. The desert has a ruthless instinct. It swallows everything if people stop remembering. Around 1400 BC, the Great Sphinx of Giza, one of the most majestic structures ever created, had almost completely vanished beneath a blanket of scorching sand. No more worshippers, no temples, no rituals, no hymns. A being carved from stone with staggering precision now lay dormant, buried, forgotten in the desert silence. Then one night, a young prince named Thutmose, resting at the base of the Sphinx, had a strange dream. According to the inscription on the dream stele, erected later between the Sphinx's paws, a god in the form of a lion with a human head spoke to the prince. The voice echoed in his dream like a call from another world. "O Thutmose, I am your father. If you clear the sand from my body, I will give you the throne of Egypt." When he awoke, Thutmose was shaken. The Sphinx was buried halfway in sand. No one remembered its original meaning. And the strangest part? Despite being built supposedly less than 800 years before, an instant in Egyptian history, people at that time no longer knew what the statue truly represented. Think carefully. How could a monument allegedly built by one of Egypt's greatest pharaohs be forgotten, buried, and neglected in just a few centuries? Egypt was a civilization that revered the past, documented everything, from the annual Nile flood to royal bloodlines. If the Sphinx was truly a symbol of royal power, why was no one guarding it? The dream stele makes no mention of Khufu. There is no claim that my ancestor built this monument. On the contrary, the Sphinx is described as a mysterious deity, without clear origin, abandoned by the descendants of the very civilization that supposedly created it. Which raises a powerful question. What if the Sphinx didn't belong to their era at all? The voice in Thutmose's dream echoed not as a king's command, but as a cry for help from a forgotten memory, an ancient soul no one truly understood. And the promise of the throne wasn't just a reward, it was a contract. Keep me alive in the memory of mankind, and I will open for you the gates of power. After Thutmose IV ascended the throne, he kept his word. He ordered the excavation, cleared the sands from the Sphinx, built a temple, and erected the dream stele between the statue's paws. Yet the truth remained, plain and unsettling. Even during the height of ancient Egypt, the Sphinx was already a forgotten mystery. A structure built by Egyptians, if that were truly the case, could not have been so quickly abandoned and erased from ritual, unless it never belonged to them to begin with. If you've ever stood before the Great Pyramid of Giza and looked up at the sky, you've probably felt small. But what's even more unsettling may not lie above you, but beneath your feet. Beneath the sun-scorched sands of the Giza Plateau, something lies hidden, a subterranean world that few are allowed to know. For centuries, rumors have persisted about tunnels, hidden chambers, and vast structures buried deep below the surface. Yet curiously, such claims have been repeatedly dismissed, as if someone wanted to hide something too monumental to reveal. One of the focal points of this underground mystery is the Osiris Shaft, a subterranean structure nearly 30 meters below ground, discovered beneath the causeway of the Pyramid of Khafre. It contains multiple levels, with stone chambers connected by narrow corridors, carved directly into the bedrock. But the most baffling part? There are no mummies, no burial items, no inscriptions, nothing to indicate this was ever a tomb. Just stone, groundwater, and an eerie silence. Acoustic researchers who've tested the space have reported unusual sound properties, natural resonance chambers where sounds not only echo, but seem to vibrate through the body. It mirrors the phenomena experienced in the king's chamber of Khufu's pyramid. Could these be part of a larger resonance system, an intentionally engineered network? In 2008, an international scientific team used ground penetrating radar, GPR, to scan the area around Giza. The results stunned them. A complex network of tunnels, sealed chambers, and man made voids was detected deep beneath the surface, many located directly beneath the pyramids and the Sphinx. These weren't natural caves. They were straight, angular, and repeated in design, clear signs of intelligent construction. Strangely, the Egyptian authorities quickly dismissed the findings. Government archaeologists declared the data unimportant. Areas were fenced off. Independent surveys were shut down. Once again, darkness fell beneath Giza as if something too significant was hidden to be exposed. But these descriptions of an underground system aren't new. In the 19th century, during Napoleon Bonaparte's campaign in Egypt, written records describe underground passages discovered by French troops while encamped at Giza. They spoke of tunnels stretching hundreds of meters, where cold air blew and strange echoes resonated. Renowned Egyptologist E. A. Wallace Budge even referred to a subterranean city beneath Giza, a labyrinth rumored to house lost ancient knowledge. So why have these records been ignored? Why has modern authority resisted all calls to dig deeper, even from respected scientific institutions? The answer may be this. If such a network truly exists, and if it connects the pyramids, the Sphinx, and other archaeological sites into a unified system, it would dismantle the notion of these structures being isolated monuments built over generations. Instead, it would suggest that Giza was planned as a cohesive complex from the start, like a planetary device, a transmission hub, or a vast archive of a lost civilization. You might feel a chill trace your spine as you realize that beneath your feet, where the sand burns hot under the Egyptian sun, there may be another world. A world where stone is not just stone, but walls, floors, corridors, and perhaps the slumbering memory of an ancient knowledge waiting to awaken. In 1993, German Egyptologist Rudolf Gantenbrink led a groundbreaking expedition. He built a small robot named Upuaut 2, meaning the opener of the ways. Its mission was to explore the mysterious air shafts of the Queen's Chamber, narrow, steep tunnels that ascend from within the Great Pyramid, previously untouched by any human or light for thousands of years. As Upuaut 2 crawled into the dark, silent southern shaft, it climbed dozens of meters into unexplored territory. Then suddenly, it stopped. Before it stood a small stone door. Unlike any ordinary stone, it had two copper handles, symmetrically embedded. It was clear. Someone had intentionally sealed this shaft. The world was stunned. What was assumed to be a useless air passage ended not in rock, but in a technically engineered gate. Questions exploded. What lies behind that door? But there were no answers, because the exploration was abruptly halted. The Egyptian authorities banned all further work by Gantenbrink, without explanation. Years later, in 2002, the Americans returned with the Pyramid Rover Project, led by a team from National Geographic, this time with official permission. They drilled through the original door discovered by Upuaut, and behind it, they found a small empty chamber, followed by a second door. Once again, mystery layered atop mystery. It seemed they would continue, drill further, explore deeper. But then, silence. The project stopped. No scientific papers were published, no televised updates, no open findings. The cameras once broadcasting live went dark. And once again, a deep, suspicious quiet settled over the site. Why stop now? Why, when we are just one thin stone slab away from the unknown, are all gates suddenly locked? What lies beyond that door that no one wants us to see? Many fringe scholars believe this could be the entrance to the Hall of Records, a legendary archive of lost knowledge from a forgotten civilization, encoded in stone and hidden at the place where light meets shadow. Egyptian myth and Atlantean lore both speak of Giza as a vault of pre-flood memory, a sanctuary where the wisdom of the world was safeguarded after a cataclysm. In this view, the Great Pyramid, with its shafts, corridors, harmonics, and sealed portals, is not a tomb, but a cosmic hard drive waiting to be unlocked. But perhaps those in power aren't ready for that truth to be revealed. Perhaps the world, as it stands, cannot face what lies beyond that door. Because if it is real, it doesn't just challenge history, it demolishes it. Entire timelines, ideologies, and assumptions would collapse. In the search for truths buried beneath the sands of Giza, some mysteries are not just buried by time, they're burned by human hands. And among the most haunting of all is the tale of a document that once existed, but can no longer be read. A message, perhaps, that came too close to the truth and was silenced before the world could hear it. It was known as the Coptic Scroll, an ancient manuscript believed to date back to the early Christian era in Egypt, discovered in the 19th century by an English collector. The scroll was never cataloged, never entered a museum, and today, no one has seen it. Everything we know comes from a single letter, a first-hand account written by the collector to a fellow scholar, sent just days before the scroll was mysteriously destroyed. According to the letter, the manuscript was not written in hieroglyphs, nor in Arabic or Latin, but in ancient Coptic, the sacred language once used by Christian monks in Egypt's post-Pharaonic period. It was reportedly found in a ruined monastery near Saqqara, hidden deep beneath a broken stone statue, guarded as a holy relic passed down from abbot to abbot. The collector recounts that he was allowed to read only the opening lines under the watchful eye of an old monk who would later vanish without a trace. And it was this opening that stunned him. The manuscript described a lighthouse of stone, said to have been built before humans had speech, and at a time when the Nile did not flow as it does today. A lighthouse of stone. Those words immediately made him think of the Great Pyramid of Giza. And if those words were true, they suggested that the pyramid existed before language, before civilization, even before the current geography of Egypt was shaped. Before he could copy or translate the entire scroll, it was completely destroyed in a bizarre fire, just days after he brought it back to England. The blaze affected only the room where the manuscript was kept. The rest of the house remained untouched. No one was arrested. No investigation followed. No official explanation was given. All that survives is a haunting handwritten letter, a shadowy recollection of a text lost at the edge of revelation, a memory of the past burned just as it was about to be seen in full light, and the unavoidable question, why was the scroll destroyed? Was it because it contained a truth too dangerous, one that someone, somewhere, could not allow to surface? Perhaps. If the Great Pyramid truly is a prehistoric archive, then it does not merely challenge history. It threatens power. And power always fears that which it cannot control. And so the scroll lives on only as a ghost in ink, a whisper turned to ash, reminding us that truth is not always buried by sand, but sometimes by fire. For centuries, the Great Pyramid of Giza has stood tall in the desert, like a silent challenge to time and to humanity. Every time new evidence emerges, every time a secret door is about to be opened, something or someone appears to close it again. Gently, quietly, but effectively. Not desert wanderers or artifact smuggling gangs, but official organizations, forces with the legal authority to control history. From the Egyptian government to UNESCO to major Western archaeological institutions, all have built an invisible wall around the Giza Plateau. The question is, why? On the surface, the reason is always heritage preservation or archaeological safety. But if you look closely, you'll see a strange common thread. Any discovery that threatens the official historical narrative, that the pyramid is the tomb of Khufu, that Egypt was the first civilization, is dismissed, ignored, or shut down. Even independent scientists who present new evidence, like Robert Schoch's water erosion theory, the pi coefficient and golden ratio of the pyramid, or the 2008 ground-penetrating radar results, are labeled as pseudoscience, baseless, or contrary to mainstream academia. Why would an academic field considered objective be so afraid of such questions? The answer may lie in this. The entire modern Egyptian tourism industry, worth billions of dollars annually, depends on the story that the great pharaohs built the pyramids. If it must be admitted that these structures do not belong to ancient Egypt, but to another, perhaps prehistoric, civilization, then every textbook, every museum, every tour would have to be rewritten, and thousands would lose economic interests, reputation, and power. But deeper still, it may be a fear of a different kind, a fear that the truth would redraw the entire picture of humanity. That before Egypt, before Sumer, before history was written in ink, there existed a far greater civilization, and it was erased. And if that is true, then humanity is not advancing, but trying to recover what was lost. Not just in Giza. At Göbekli Tepe, Turkey, a 12,000-year-old stone temple was deliberately buried. At Teotihuacan, Mexico, the tunnels beneath the Pyramid of the Sun were sealed off shortly after discovery. Why? Because they pose the same question. Who really built these wonders? And why is there so much effort to hide them? No one says it, but you can feel the silence, like standing before a door unopened, knowing that inside lies something that could change the world, and someone is holding the key. And then you must ask yourself, are we living in a world that doesn't lack truth, but lacks permission to know it? Standing before the gleaming black granite blocks, cut smooth as mirrors, fitted so tightly you can't slip a sheet of paper between them, people often ask, how did they do this? The conventional answer with copper tools feels like an insult to the intelligence of those who once lived, carved, and touched those stones. Granite is not a soft stone. It is the second hardest natural stone, only after diamond. And yet, at the pyramids, the Valley Temple, and the underground complexes of Giza, massive granite blocks weighing 15 to 80 tons were cut with precision akin to modern CNC machines. The cuts are clean, the grooves perfectly straight, and most astonishingly, some blocks bear spiral drill marks deep into the stone, which even today require industrial drill bits to replicate. And it wasn't just cutting. These colossal blocks, some quarried from Aswan, over 800 kilometers away, were transported across rivers through deserts and placed with near zero margin of error. How did they move stones as heavy as tanks? How did they lift them dozens of meters high without cranes, wheels, or engines? No Egyptian text ever gives the answer. No diagrams, no tool descriptions, no engineering records. Only the stone remains, and the silence of stone, a silence that chills the soul. Many alternative researchers have suggested, what if that ancient civilization possessed a technology now lost to us? Some speak of frequency-based tools, sound shaping matter. Others propose magnetic levitation or gravitational resonance. It sounds outrageous until you stand before a stone wall tighter than modern bricks and wonder, could a copper chisel really have done this? Let's look beyond Egypt to Stonehenge, where blue stones were transported over 200 kilometers and erected in alignment with the winter solstice sun. To Puma Punku in Bolivia, where stone blocks weighing hundreds of tons are drilled and grooved as if by lathe machines. To Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, where T-shaped stone pillars 6 meters tall were carved 12,000 years ago. All over the world, impossible stonework repeats itself, crafted with techniques that defy explanation by primitive tools. No cultural links, no shared timelines, but one common trait, a knowledge of geometry, sound, and gravity far beyond our current understanding. Perhaps those ancients didn't need machines as we do. Perhaps they understood the workings of the universe on a more subtle level, where sound shapes form, vibration lifts mass, and stone becomes the language of knowledge. And if that's true, then the pyramid isn't just an ancient monument. It's the remnant of a vast buried technology, not lost to time, but to the limits of our imagination. For thousands of years, a legend has echoed through history, a tale of a mighty, enlightened civilization, rich in power and wisdom, that vanished in a single night. That story comes from Plato, the great philosopher of ancient Greece. In his 2 works, Timaeus and Critias, he describes Atlantis, a vast island kingdom located beyond the Pillars of Hercules, now believed to be the Strait of Gibraltar. Atlantis possessed a powerful military, magnificent temples, artificial canals, and a sophisticated political and social system far surpassing any civilization of its time. But then, according to Plato, around 9600 BC, due to pride and moral decay, Atlantis was punished by nature with catastrophic earthquakes and floods, and sank into the sea in a single day and night. Coincidentally, or suspiciously, that is also the period that aligns with the end of the African humid period, when the Sahara Desert began to dry out and transform into the sea of sand we know today. It is also the time frame consistent with water erosion on the Sphinx, suggesting that heavy rains once fell on Giza thousands of years before recorded history. If Atlantis once existed, and if it truly was destroyed around 9600 BC, then could it be that some of the survivors left the island, found new land, and carried with them the knowledge to build monuments? Giza, with its pyramid and sphinx, might not be the beginning of a civilization, but the stone memory of what remained. A prehistoric lighthouse, as one ancient text once described it, to mark the place where humanity restarted from the ashes. Not just Giza. Across the world, ancient traces, strange and far beyond their era's capabilities, appear simultaneously. At Göbekli Tepe, Turkey, we find T-shaped stone temples carved with animals, dated to over 11,000 years ago, earlier than the supposed invention of agriculture. At Yonaguni, Japan, beneath the sea, are massive terraced stone formations with straight cuts, believed to be the ruins of a submerged prehistoric structure. At Pumapunku, Bolivia, the stone blocks look as if assembled by 3D printers, fitted together with impossible precision. All raise the same question. Could there have once been a global civilization, not connected by war, but by knowledge, astronomy, geometry, and a deep understanding of the Earth? If that is true, then the builders of the pyramids did not need wheels, nor iron and steel. They did not aim for domination, but for harmony with the cosmos. They left their knowledge not in books, but in stone, because only stone survives the great floods. And perhaps the Sphinx, with its unchanging gaze toward the sunrise, is the final gatekeeper of Atlantis, silent through tens of thousands of years, waiting for an age mature enough to understand the whispers of sand, wind, and numbers etched deep into granite. When you step into the king's chamber, deep within the heart of the Great Pyramid of Giza, the first thing you perceive is not light, but vibration. There, the space seems to have a soul. If you let out a sound, even just a gentle hum, you will hear it return, deeper, longer, as if the very stone is answering you. Acoustic researchers have documented this phenomenon. The king's chamber resonates strongly between 110 to 120 hertz, a frequency range known to affect human physiology, particularly the abdomen and pelvic regions, which are connected to the body's energy centers, according to ancient knowledge. But the king's chamber is not the only place in Giza with this property. The Osiris shaft, located nearly 30 meters underground, also exhibits a similar resonant frequency. Within its natural stone surroundings, sounds echo back with uncanny precision, as if the structure were intentionally designed to amplify invisible vibrations. Notably, many of these chambers are built using granite, a stone that contains quartz, a mineral known to vibrate and conduct energy when stimulated by sound waves or electromagnetic fields. In modern electronics, quartz is used in oscillating circuits to generate precise frequencies. If the ancients understood this property, then their use of granite was no accident. It had a clear purpose: to activate, amplify, or transmit energy through sound. The idea that sound can influence matter or even alter states of consciousness is no longer foreign in modern science. But could it be that the ancients knew this tens of thousands of years ago and built the pyramid as a colossal resonance machine? This phenomenon is not unique to Egypt. At the hypogeum of Hal Saflieni in Malta, a subterranean temple over 5,000 years old, scientists discovered a chamber with a strange sound resonance at 110 hertz, similar to Giza. When sound is produced, people standing inside report feelings of dizziness, dreaminess, even altered perception of time and space. At Chavindehuantar in Peru, an ancient ceremonial center, an underground system of acoustic channels was found that produces echo effects and reverberating sounds, making participants feel as if they were communicating with the gods. It seems that across the world, ancient cultures understood that sound was not merely something to hear, but a tool for feeling, connection, and transformation. And if that's the case, then the pyramid is not simply a physical structure. It is a monumental instrument, a planetary-scale resonant device designed not just to endure time, but to transmit something beyond language, a state, an experience, another dimension. Could it be that the builders had discovered what modern science is only just beginning to touch, the resonance between matter, energy, and human consciousness? When modern humans stand before the Great Pyramid of Giza, the prevailing feeling is one of awe. How could such a magnificent structure have been created in an era when the wheel was not widespread, tools were made of copper, and there was no concept of modern science? That very feeling has led some researchers, brave, even considered mad, to ask a question. What if the ancients were not alone? In 1968, Swiss author Erich von Däniken published the controversial book Chariots of the Gods, in which he proposed a bold hypothesis. Many ancient structures, including the pyramid, were built with assistance from extraterrestrial beings. not to dominate, but to guide, to leave traces, or to plant seeds for humanity's journey of consciousness. Daniken argued that, given the extraordinary mathematical precision, the extremely accurate astronomical alignments, and the complete absence of any construction records, the pyramid resembled a device more than a building. A device for what? For communication? For navigation? Or to test the cognitive potential of humankind? He was not alone. Over the decades, many independent researchers have pointed out that ancient structures around the world exhibit characteristics difficult to explain with the technology of their time. And when viewed from an off-world perspective, they suddenly make sense. Look up to the sky, then back to the Earth. The pyramid is aligned precisely to the pole star and the Orion constellation, a constellation revered by many ancient civilizations as the origin point of the gods. The three main pyramids, Khufu, Khafre, and Menkaure, are aligned exactly with the three stars of Orion's belt, including the offset. Coincidence or intentional design? Look to Nazca, Peru. Massive geoglyphs, only visible from above, form birds, monkeys, strange creatures. Who drew them? And why, if no one at the time could see them in their entirety? Or visit Pumapunku, where stone blocks appear cast like concrete molds, with intricate grooves that even modern engineers find daunting. All of it suggests an intelligence far beyond ancient technological norms. The alien hypothesis doesn't have to mean flying saucers or gray-skinned beings. It could represent subtle intervention from a cosmic civilization in the form of technology, knowledge, or even a message. And the pyramid, when viewed from high enough, far enough, and through an unconventional lens, could be a signal intentionally placed on Earth, a sign saying, we were here. Or perhaps, we are watching. The haunting and thrilling question is, if someone out there really helped, did they leave? Or are they waiting for us to understand? Whether you believe it or not, one truth remains. The pyramid is unlike anything modern humans have ever created, especially in prehistory. And if your imagination is open enough, you may feel that perhaps, just perhaps, we are not the first chapter in the human story. After all the journeys through the dust of time, through stone, numbers, sound, and legend, one possibility grows ever clearer, like a silhouette emerging from the mist. The pyramid was not built to bury the dead. It was built to preserve living knowledge. It is no coincidence that the greatest monument of Egyptian civilization bears no inscription, no king's name, no story told in words. In an ancient world where everything, from death to food, was carved into walls, the pyramid chose silence. This was not an omission. It was intentional. Language can be lost. Symbols can be misunderstood. But mathematics transcends time. Look at the numbers. The perimeter divided by height is nearly equal to 2 pi. The angle of the sides produces a value close to the golden ratio phi. The height multiplied by 43,200 equals Earth's polar radius. The perimeter multiplied by 43,200 equals Earth's equatorial circumference. The internal corridors align precisely with the pole star and the Orion constellation at exactly the sky configuration of circa 2450 BC. This is not coincidence. This is encoding. The pyramid is like a stone hard drive, storing physical constants, astronomical knowledge, and geometric concepts far beyond what a primitive agrarian society could develop on its own. No books, no interpreters, just measurement. Those who come from the future, or from after a catastrophe, need only know how to measure, how to calculate, and they will read the message. This is Earth. These are its proportions. These are the positions of the stars. This is the knowledge to begin again. And if we believe that history is not a straight line rising upward, but a spiral, with peaks and collapses, with floods, disasters, and forgetfulness, then we understand why someone would want to leave behind a vault of knowledge in the most indestructible form, stone. Perhaps the pyramid was not built to honor the past, but to speak to the future. Not a prayer, but a message. We once knew, and you can remember. And the question for us, modern humans with satellites, artificial intelligence, and nuclear bombs, is no longer, who built the pyramid? But rather, why did they leave it for us? Giza is not just a tourist destination, not merely a monument. It is a challenge, a mirror, a call to measure again, to feel again, to listen again, with both heart and intellect. Perhaps within the very numbers etched into stone lies the key to a future we are blindly searching for. Pause, take a deep breath, and look back at the journey we've just taken. From the water erosion marks on the body of the Sphinx revealing a wet past older than mainstream history allows, to the intricate mathematical codes embedded in the structure of the pyramid, the pi ratio, the golden ratio phi, Earth's circumference, astronomical alignments of chilling precision. From empty chambers with no mummies and no inscriptions, to ancient texts destroyed by fire, robots halted mid-exploration, and corridors leading to nothingness. We have walked through a labyrinth of unaskable questions, and now, the picture before us, though still incomplete, is clearer than ever. Giza is not solely the product of ancient Egypt. It is the legacy of a civilization erased from human memory. Perhaps Atlantis, or a nameless prehistoric knowledge. Perhaps it was built by survivors of a global cataclysm. Perhaps it is the creation of entities not of this earth. Whether you believe it or not, the stones remain, unchanged for thousands of years, waiting for humanity to ask the right questions. Not to satisfy curiosity, but to remember something deeply embedded in our very nature. Because if Giza is a vault of knowledge, that knowledge is not just for archaeologists or physicists. It is for the human imagination, an imagination that has long slept beneath the dry lines of written history. And for that, we must dare to imagine. Imagine that history is not linear, that intelligence does not only move forward but can spiral, that some memories are not kept in books but in stone. Night falls over the Giza Plateau. The moon hangs silently in the sky, casting silver light over the Sphinx, the half-human, half-lion creature, still gazing eastward, where the sun will rise as it has for tens of thousands of years. Behind the Sphinx, the pyramid towers, wordless, expressionless, like a symbol of waiting. Waiting for a generation that dares to ask. Waiting for a world humble enough to admit it has forgotten. Waiting for a person, maybe you, to pause in the desert and hear the echo from the stone. For there are shapes the memory has forgotten, but the heart still remembers. And perhaps Giza is not just a place to visit, but a calling. From the past, for the future.